if you want to make black and white prints in a darkroom at home, watch this video. Because in this edition of Jules Voto's Photo Focus, I'm going to tell you all the equipment you need to make your own black and white prints. Now, previously, I did a video on the equipment that you need to develop film. And a lot of that equipment you can also use for your printmaking. I also did a video on processing a roll of black and white film. A dummy roll, but the procedure was the same as if you had a real roll. And also, my most recent video on darkroom work was my video on enlargers, specifically the Omega B22 XL enlarger, but a lot of good information there on any enlarger. So in this video, we're going to talk about all the other things that you need to make your own prints. We're not going to talk about the enlarger. You could watch that other video, and I will put a link in the description below to those 3 videos: the equipment for film, processing film, and the enlarger. So a lot of the things, as I said, that you use for processing film, you could use for making prints. So you're going to need a thermometer, okay? Temperature isn't as critical with prints as it is for film, but you should have a thermometer. Same thermometer you used for developing film. You're going to need some graduated cylinders, okay? I have a bunch here. You don't need that many. You're going to mix the stock solution of the chemicals. Usually you mix that in 1-gallon quantities and then you dilute it when you use it. So I recommend a 1-gallon graduated cylinder, but you're also going to need some smaller ones. You're going to need some bottles to store the chemicals, okay? I have here a 1/2-gallon brown glass bottle. Here's a 1-quart bottle. Several 1/2-gallon bottles, several quart bottles should suffice. As far as the chemicals, and I will get into chemicals when I actually show you the process of making prints, and that's down the road a little bit. I'm still getting my basement set up to do printing. So the chemicals you need are very basic. You need a stop bath like you do for film. You need a fixer like you do for film, but you need a different developer. For film, we use film developer, surprisingly, and for paper, we use paper developer. Okay, we'll get into that in great detail when I actually show you how to make prints, mix the chemicals, and so forth. Okay, so what else do you need? I think I talked about this when I talked about the enlarger, but you need an easel. You need a paper easel to hold your paper under the enlarger, to hold it flat. There are many different kinds of easels. This is what's known as a 4-blade easel. They are still made today, but they are very expensive. So if you want a 4-blade easel, I would advise look online, look for a used one. You don't need a 4-blade easel. So what's a 4-blade easel used for? We'll talk about this briefly. You can make different size borders. Okay, so here I made a 7x10 print on 8x10 paper. You'll notice the border at the top and the bottom is wider. And here I made an a 7.5 by 7.5 print on 8x10 paper. So the 4-blade easel allows you to make borders like that. There are other much simpler easels that are set for a specific size for borderless printing. There are others that'll give you a 1/4-inch border all around, but you do need something to hold the paper. So what else do you need? Well, you're going to need a timer. This timer here that you see, this big one, I use when I develop film. Okay, I could set it to a time. Let's say I'm going to develop for 10 minutes. Start the timer, okay? But I also use it for processing the paper. Paper is processed in trays, and I'll get into trays in a minute, what trays you need. But what I usually do when I'm making prints, And actually, I say what I usually do. I haven't made prints in over 20 years. But what I'll do is I'll just set this thing to like 59 minutes and turn it on. And then when I put the paper into the developer, paper develops in a minute, minute and a half, depending on the paper. If you use RC paper, it's about a minute, minute and a half. Fiber-based paper, RC paper is plastic coated. This is RC paper. I know you can't really tell, but fiber-based paper is a lot nicer, and it takes a little bit longer to process, a minute and a half to 3 minutes, okay? So I just let that run, and I just make a note of where the second hand is when I put the paper into the developer, okay? But you also need, you could use this to do enlarging, but I think it's better to have a separate enlarging timer, a timer for the enlarger. I paid $15 for this. It's a Time-O light. There's all kinds of models of Time-O light. I would look for one of these. Basically, the way it works, you plug it into the wall, you plug the enlarger into it, and I have it set here for what, 5 seconds? And I just press the button, and it will count down 5 seconds. It will turn the light on the enlarger on for 5 seconds. Okay, so that's something, and again, we'll get into great detail on that later on. I think I talked about this in the other video on enlargers. You're going to probably be using polycontrast paper, or what Ilford calls multi-grade paper. So you need filters for your enlarger to give you different contrast grades. And we will get into that again in the future. Papers before multi-contrast papers, before polycontrast is what Kodak calls them, papers came graded. Number 2 paper, number 3, number 4, number 1. And you need different grades of paper depending on your negative. So a normal negative with normal contrast, you would use a number 2. A low contrast negative that you want to increase the contrast, you might use a 3 or a number 4. And with these poly contrast filters, I should say multi-grade filters, same thing really, you have grades in between, okay? So you're going to need a set of these. These are kind of expensive today, but again, you may be able to find some used ones. They go above the negative. So if they're a little scratched or whatever, it really won't matter. They do also sell them that go under the lens. I don't recommend them. Just get filters that will mount above. And most enlargers do have a filter drawer to enable you to do that. Again, I mentioned that. I talked about that in the previous video. All right, what else? For film, I suggested you have an apron. Even more important, when making prints, okay? So make sure you get some type of apron. This is just a cloth apron. They sell photographers' aprons. Some of them are very cheap, but just some type of apron to protect your clothing. Okay, so for film, you need to be in total darkness, okay? The film you'll be shooting is panchromatic film, which means it's sensitive to all colors of light. So there is no safe light. Despite what some people may say, there is no safe light that is safe for film. However, there are safe lights that are safe for paper. For multi-contrast paper, for Ilford multi-grade paper, for Kodak polycontrast paper, you need a filter with an you need a safe light filter, an OC safe light filter. Many safe lights enable you to change the filter depending on the type of material you're using. A red filter could be used for ortho films, films in graphic arts, but for multi-grade paper, you need an OC filter. It's kind of an amber brown. I don't currently have one. I have one on order. I should be receiving it soon, but that's very important. And so you have some light then when you're making prints, okay? The safe lights take usually a 15-watt bulb. They must be 4 feet away from the paper. So you set it up so that it's at least 4 feet away. And once your eyes adapt to that low amount of light, you'll be able to see enough to move around your dark room or whatever area you use to make your prints. And you'll have adequate vision in with the safe light. Okay? All right. So how do you process the paper? You need trays. Okay? Now, these are 11 by 14 trays. Actually, they're about 12 by 16. So if you're going to be making prints up to 11 by 14, I suggest you get 11 by 14 trays. And you need one for your developer. Okay, you need one for your stop bath. And again, I'll explain. If you saw the video on processing film, then you know what these chemicals are. You need one for the fixer. Now, once the paper has been in the fixer for a short time, you could turn the room lights on, okay? And then you're going to need one to wash your prints. And the prints should be washed in running water. Now, what if you don't have running water in your darkroom? Then what I suggest is you have what we call a holding tray. So you'll have a tray of water, and after the prints come out of the fixer, you put it in that tray. Now, RC papers should not be in water for more than 10 to 15 minutes. So you make some prints, you have them in your holding tray, and then take them to where you have running water to wash your prints. RC prints, which are rosin-coated paper. Okay? RC prints are made on rosin-coated paper. They do not require a long wash time, a couple minutes. Just read the instructions with the paper you get that will tell you how long to wash. Now, I bought these trays, some 11 by 14 trays, some 8 by 10 trays, and some other things for a very good price. And one of the trays, the gentleman who sold them to me had drilled some holes in them. So this was what he used to wash the prints. So he put this in his sink, probably propped it up on something, let the water run in, and then water would run out through the bottom here. And that's a good way to wash your prints. Okay? So you put some holes and you'll get an efficient wash. Fiber-based papers, a little bit different, a little longer to develop, a little bit longer to fix, and a good bit longer to wash. But again, we're not going to worry too much about that right now. All right, so now once you're done, once you washed your print, what do? Okay, with RC prints, you can just take a squeegee off that loose water. You could hang them up on the same line that I showed you when we developed film. Just use a little clip on the end. You could also use a blotter book, and that's what I suggest for fiber-based papers. Okay, fiber-based papers take longer to dry, and you got to keep them flat as they dry. That's the best way to do it, or else they're going to kind of curl up a little bit. Not double weight paper, and I suggest if you do fiber-based prints, you use double weight paper. There's also a single weight paper. You know what? I don't even know if single weight paper is made anymore, but you want to use a double weight paper. It's double the thickness. Okay, so what else do you need? All right, so when you put your prints into the developer, you know, in the old days, I just used to use my hands and agitate the print in the developer and then transfer it to the stop bath. It's better to buy yourself some tongs. They're very inexpensive. They're made of bamboo. They have rubber tips. And you could, here we go, let's demonstrate this. I'm just going to throw this sheet of paper in here. And then what you'll do, you kind of agitate it a little. You could rock the tray to agitate. But then you're going to pick it up and transfer it to the next chemical with the tongs. And then these are tongs that came with these trays that I bought, and he has them marked. He has this one stop, so he has this in the stop bath. There's one marked developer, one marked fixer, and that's the proper way to do it. You don't want to contaminate your developer with stop bath. So the tongs you use in your developer, drop your print in, make sure it doesn't touch the solution, and then transfer that print with your stop bath tongs, and then Once they're in the fixer, you use your fixer tongs to transfer to your wash tray. So if you're doing up to 11 by 14, I suggest you get the 11 by 14 trays. If you're not going to go above 8 by 10, get yourself a set of 8 by 10 trays. I recommend at least 4 trays. So we got developer, stop bath, fixer, and a holding tray, let's say. And I suggest you use a bigger tray for washing purposes. So if you're doing 8 by 10s, have an 11 by 14 tray to wash your prints. It just gives the prints a little bit more room to move around, and when you're washing them, check on them. You don't want them sticking together, and that's why a bigger tray would work better. It's not a must, but it is better. I think I mentioned the grain focuser in my video on the enlarger, but you want to get some type of a grain focuser. I bought this one. It's like brand new. It's called a microsite. That's the kind I had years ago. And what you do is when you're framing up your image on your easel, you just place this down on a blank sheet of paper that you use for focusing and just put the focuser on it, and then you look in here and you adjust your enlarger, and you're focusing on the grain of the negative. This magnifies a lot. I'm not sure how many times it magnifies, at least 10 times. So you are seeing the grain, and you focus on the grain, and then you're sure that your image will be sharp, as long as your negative's sharp. What else? Well, you're going to need a stirring rod. I should have mentioned that earlier. You're going to need an easel once you mix your chemicals to pour them back into their bottles. Now, developer, you mix a stock solution, you dilute it when you make your prints, and when you're done, you discard it. Same thing with the stop bath. Stop bath is inexpensive. It's most stop bath is what they call indicator stop bath. It's yellow. When it turns dark, usually purple, time to discard it. But I usually dump it after I've made my prints, after my print session for that particular day. Fixer has a certain capacity, so as long as you haven't made more prints than you can with that particular amount of fixer, you just pour it back in. And I always make a note on the bottle. I'll put a label on the bottle. You know, I made 10 prints with this quart of fixer, so I know I could get more. I think a quart of fixer with RC paper might be 30 or 40 8 by 10 prints. I'm not sure, but that's easy to find out. So what else is there? I think that's about it. Trays. Trays are sold new. They're not that expensive. Plastic trays are fine. This is an old rubber tray. They were very popular back in the old day. You could also get stainless steel trays, which are expensive. You don't really need stainless steel. Plastic trays will suffice. So that is it. Oh, one other thing. How could I forget? All right. One of the nice things about making prints with an enlarger, as opposed to sending them to the lab and having them make machine prints, is you have a lot more control. If you have done work with Photoshop, you know there are tools in Photoshop to dodge and burn in. So what is dodging? Okay, let's say you're making a print and you have some shadow areas that you want to lighten up. Now, you could just make an exposure on your enlarger, develop it, but you have control of those shadow areas. So you make yourself some tools. Now, this is just a piece of cardboard attached to a piece of wire, and you just hold this over that shadow area, and you keep it moving. And again, I'll explain more about this when we're actually making prints. And it cuts down on the exposure to that shadow area. The other thing you can do is burn in. Let's say you have a highlight area, a light area. Let's say you photograph some snow and it's coming out like pure white. Well, you could take a piece of cardboard, cut a hole in it, and again, moving it as during the exposure to give it more exposure. So you make your basic exposure. I could explain this better. Make your basic exposure and then turn the enlarger on, set your timer for however long you think. And a lot of this is trial and error. You'll learn as you go. And you just hold this over the area you want to give more exposure to. And the cardboard blocks the light from everything else and only hits the area where you have the hole in the cardboard. All right, you can make other shapes and sizes. You want your piece of cardboard for your burning in tool to be bigger than the sheet of paper that you're exposing, because if you move it to the edge of the frame, then the other area on the other side will get too much exposure. Okay, so I think that's it. I don't think I've missed anything. Like I said, I haven't made prints in over 20 years, and I'm really looking forward to getting back into it, and I'll be doing that soon. I do not have running water in my basement, so it's best to have it, makes it much easier. So I'm going to be doing that thing with the holding tray. I'll put my prints in the holding tray, then run upstairs to the bathroom and wash my prints. But that's okay. It just wasn't practical to put in running water in the basement. I would have needed some type of a pump to pump up to the soil line. Okay, so if there's any questions or comments you have on this video, please leave them in the comments below. And especially if you have a question that requires a long answer, just email me. My email will be in the description below. All my previous videos on darkroom work will be in the description below as well. So I always try to respond to all questions and comments, so feel free to ask me anything you want. And if you enjoyed this video, please give it a thumbs up and subscribe to my channel. I usually publish a new video every Monday morning and Wednesday morning at 11 a.m. Eastern Time. So thanks for watching, and I will talk to you soon.